Have you ever bought a beautiful notebook for a new habit, downloaded a bunch of productivity apps, or reorganized your workspace, only to realize that weeks later, the actual habit, project, or goal hasn't moved forward at all? It feels like you've been making progress. You've been preparing, setting up, getting ready. But somehow, the thing you were supposed to be doing still hasn't truly started. That's the illusion of progress. It's when your brain rewards you for the feeling of moving forward without you actually taking the step that matters most. And it's more common than you might think. This isn't just procrastination in disguise. It's a psychological trap that can make you feel busy, even accomplished, while keeping you safely away from the discomfort of real action. To understand why we fall into it, we need to look at what's going on in your brain when you prepare versus when you execute. The moment you decide to start something, a new skill, a big project, a lifestyle change, your brain releases a small dose of dopamine just for envisioning the outcome. This is nature's way of motivating you. But here's the catch. You can trigger that same dopamine by doing things related to your goal without actually touching the goal itself. Buying equipment, researching endlessly, organizing your schedule, these all create the emotional illusion that you're already halfway there. And because dopamine is a chemical reward, your brain doesn't care that you're just circling the runway. It still celebrates as if you've taken off. The result? You start to crave the planning phase because it's safe, familiar, and rewarding in the short term. Real action, on the other hand, often feels uncertain, messy, and vulnerable. That's why you might find yourself stuck in an endless loop of preparation. This is especially tricky because preparation is important. We're not saying you should just leap blindly into everything. But the danger lies in mistaking preparation for execution. It's like a chef who spends hours sharpening knives, arranging spices, and setting the table, but never actually starts cooking. Over time, this illusion can lead to frustration, self-doubt, and a quiet erosion of trust in yourself, because deep down, you know you haven't truly begun. So why does our brain prefer this safe zone? One reason is the concept of cognitive closure. We humans like to feel that things are neatly wrapped up. Starting something messy means inviting uncertainty, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. Preparation tricks the brain into thinking we've achieved a small kind of closure, without exposing ourselves to risk. Another reason is ego protection. As long as we're preparing, we can imagine a perfect version of our future success. The moment we start, that fantasy has to face reality. And reality includes mistakes, slow progress, and the possibility of failure. So we stall. The illusion of progress also connects to the planning fallacy, our tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take and overestimate our ability to control them. When we're preparing, we imagine a smooth, efficient path ahead. But when we actually begin, we hit obstacles, and those can feel like a sign we're not ready, pushing us back into preparation mode. This cycle is reinforced by the social dimension too. If you talk a lot about your plans, post them online, or share them with friends, you might receive praise or validation before you've done anything tangible. This social dopamine can be powerful enough to make the actual work feel less urgent. The applause feels like proof that you've already achieved something. Now that we understand why the illusion of progress feels so convincing, how do we break free from it without swinging to the opposite extreme of rushing in unprepared? The key is to shift your focus from getting ready to getting moving. This requires redefining what counts as a first step. For many people, the first step is too abstract or too big. It's write a book instead of write one messy paragraph today. The smaller and more concrete you make it, the easier it is to actually start. Another powerful technique is the two-track method. Balance preparation and execution from the very beginning. If you're learning to run, don't spend 2 weeks researching the perfect shoes before you hit the pavement. Spend one evening reading reviews, then run the next morning in the shoes you already have. Let real-world feedback shape your preparation instead of waiting until you feel perfectly ready. It also helps to set action checkpoints in your preparation process. Ask yourself, have I taken at least one action that directly moves me toward the end goal, not just toward being ready? If the answer is no, it's time to pause the planning and do something tangible. For example, if you're preparing to start a business, your action checkpoint might be making your first sale, even if it's small, instead of endlessly tweaking your website. To avoid the trap of false momentum, be wary of activities that feel productive but don't produce measurable results. This doesn't mean those activities are worthless. It just means they shouldn't dominate your time. A good test is to ask, if I stopped doing this today, would my actual goal be any closer? If the answer is no, you might be indulging in the illusion of progress. There's also a mindset shift that can help. Embrace imperfection as the entry fee for real progress. Think of it like learning to swim. You can read all the manuals you want, but at some point you have to get in the water. And yes, you're going to splash around awkwardly at first. The discomfort you feel when you take real action is not a sign you're failing. It's proof you've moved past the safe zone of illusion and into the space where actual growth happens. We also need to talk about identity. If you see yourself as someone who's preparing, it's hard to transition into someone who's doing. This is why it's important to start identifying as the thing you want to be from day one. If you're training for a marathon, don't tell yourself, "I'm getting ready to be a runner." You are a runner the moment you take your first run, no matter how short. This identity shift makes it easier to act because the action feels aligned with who you already are. Another practical tool is to limit your preparation window. Set a deadline for when you'll stop researching, organizing, or buying supplies and start executing. Deadlines create healthy pressure and prevent preparation from becoming an open-ended escape. The trick is to make that deadline realistic but firm, something you commit to as seriously as a meeting with someone important. Finally, don't underestimate the role of accountability. If you tend to get lost in endless preparation, involve someone who can nudge you toward action. This could be a friend, a coach, or even an online community where you commit to specific, measurable steps. External eyes can help you see when you're hiding in the safety of preparation. The beauty of breaking free from the illusion of progress is that once you start taking real action, even small, imperfect steps, you tap into a different kind of momentum, one that's harder to fake and far more satisfying. It's the difference between endlessly arranging your hiking gear at home and actually stepping onto the trail. The first is safe but stagnant. The second is unpredictable but alive. And that's where your real growth begins. One subtle but powerful way to dismantle the illusion of progress is to measure outcomes instead of effort. This doesn't mean ignoring the hard work you put in, but it does mean prioritizing indicators that prove you're moving closer to your actual goal. For instance, if you're learning a language, tracking hours studied can keep you stuck in preparation mode, while tracking minutes of real conversation with a native speaker forces you into action territory. Outcome-based metrics shift your focus from the comfort of activity to the sometimes uncomfortable reality of results. Another important piece is learning to tolerate the emotional discomfort that comes with execution. Most of us don't get stuck because we're lazy. We get stuck because action threatens our sense of competence. The first real attempt at anything is often clumsy, incomplete, and not nearly as polished as we imagined. This gap between expectation and reality can trigger feelings of inadequacy, and our brain's defense is to retreat to the safer, more predictable territory of preparation. The solution here isn't to ignore those feelings, but to expect them and reframe them. Instead of interpreting discomfort as a sign you're doing something wrong, recognize it as a sign you're in the real game now. True progress is often disguised as awkward beginnings. To help with this reframing, you can use a simple mental exercise. Name the discomfort. When you catch yourself resisting a task because you don't feel ready, pause and label what's happening. I'm feeling uncertainty, or I'm afraid of not doing it perfectly. By identifying the emotion, you take it out of the shadows and give yourself a choice. Act anyway, or stay in the illusion. Often, just seeing the pattern is enough to break it. It's also useful to create a habit of starting before you're ready in small, low-stakes contexts. This is like training your tolerance for uncertainty. If you normally spend days researching before trying a new recipe, try skipping the research and cooking with what you already know. If you usually map out every step before presenting an idea at work, try pitching a rough version to a trusted colleague first. These micro-actions build the muscle of execution so that when bigger projects come along, you're less likely to hide in preparation. Another strategy is to intertwine preparation and action so tightly that they're almost inseparable. Instead of finishing all your planning first and then switching into execution mode, make them parallel processes. If you're writing a book, research your next chapter while drafting the one before it. If you're starting a podcast, record your first episode while still fine-tuning your branding. This way, your momentum is built from both learning and doing, preventing you from getting trapped in one or the other. Let's also acknowledge that the illusion of progress isn't always a bad thing. It becomes harmful only when it replaces action entirely. Some preparation can be motivating and even necessary. The key is to recognize when it's serving you and when it's protecting you from the vulnerability of starting. A practical way to check this is to ask yourself, am I preparing to enhance my action, or am I preparing to avoid my action? The honesty of your answer can be uncomfortable, but it's also liberating. One more subtle danger of endless preparation is that it can quietly erode your self-trust. Each time you tell yourself you'll start after just one more bit of research and then delay again, you teach yourself, often unconsciously, that your own commitments aren't reliable. Over time, this can make future goals harder to believe in, even when you have the skills to achieve them. The antidote is to build a track record of small but consistent follow-throughs. These don't have to be dramatic, they just have to be real. Sending that email, making that phone call, submitting that first draft, each one rebuilds the internal evidence that you're someone who does what you say you'll do, and that confidence compounds. If you've been caught in the loop of getting ready without starting, the shift into real action might feel like jumping into cold water. It's shocking at first, and your instincts will tell you to get out. But if you stay in long enough, you acclimate, and eventually you start swimming naturally. The hardest part is the entry, crossing the invisible line between the safety of preparation and the reality of execution. Once you've crossed it, momentum becomes your ally instead of your enemy. To make that leap easier, try committing to minimum viable actions, the smallest version of your goal that still counts as doing the thing. If your goal is to exercise, it could be 5 push-ups. If your goal is to launch a blog, it could be publishing a 200-word post. The magic here is that once you've started, even in a tiny way, you've already broken the illusion. From that point on, your brain shifts from imagining to experiencing, and the satisfaction you get from actual progress starts to replace the fleeting hit you used to get from preparing. Over time, you'll notice something fascinating. The more you practice this shift, the less seductive the illusion becomes. You start to recognize the hollow sweetness of fake progress and crave the richer satisfaction of the real thing. And that's when your relationship with action changes. You stop waiting to feel ready because you know that readiness is a byproduct of doing, not a prerequisite. So the next time you catch yourself deep in the comfort of preparing, buying new gear, color-coding your planner, reading just one more guide, pause and ask, what's the smallest real step I can take right now? Then take it. Even if it's messy, even if it's not perfect, especially if it's not perfect. Because that's where the truth lives. Not in the plans, not in the potential, but in the imperfect living reality of your first move forward. And if this conversation has sparked even one small shift in how you see your own patterns, imagine what could happen if you made a habit of it. That's exactly what we explore here on Mind Unlocked. Turning awareness into tools you can use, and turning tools into habits that reshape your life. If you found value in this, consider liking this video, sharing it with someone who might be stuck in their own illusion of progress, and subscribing for more insights that help you build your personal toolkit for better thinking. Your next step might just start here.